Okay, everyone, I think we'll make a start. Good afternoon, and welcome to our latest webinar, where today we're going to be exploring the impact AI is going to have on ESG reporting. So folks, any questions today as we work our way through the webinar? If I can ask you to drop them into the chat, and we'll get to them at the end of the webinar. And this session is also going to be recorded, and we'll share all of that with you tomorrow or the start of next week as well. So just to be aware that it is also being recorded. But folks, I'm delighted to be joined by Suzanne Hill today. Suzanne is the founder of AI for SMEs, and the two of us are really just going to discuss, I suppose, like the evolution of ESG and where we're currently at, and the potential impact AI is going to have on all of that, particularly the data capture and the reporting piece as well. And Suzanne will help us to wrap our heads around, I suppose, some of the key considerations that we should be aware of when it comes to integrating AI into our businesses. And of course, we're going to explore the pros and the cons. I think it's important we are aware that it's not all positive. There are definite implications there, so we need to be aware of those. And hopefully by the end of this session, you'll be taking away some practical steps, some practical next steps in terms of what you can all do within your own businesses to get started on your own AI journey. Okay, so before just getting to the introductions, we're going to pop a quick poll up on screen, and I'll ask you all just to complete it. I think, look, today it would be really, really useful to know how many of you on the call today have already started using AI tools, have already started integrating AI tools into your business. So yeah, if you just take a couple of seconds there and answer that poll, please, that would be great. And we'll do the results of this. We've just got this on one other poll later. We will get the results of those towards the end of the webinar as well. Okay, folks, so just very, very quickly in terms of introductions, many of you will maybe know by now, my name is Liam McEvoy, and I'm one of the co-founders of SustainIQ. SustainIQ is the all-in-one ESG and sustainability reporting software solution. Basically, we make it easy for our customers to capture their data and report on their ESG performance to their many, many stakeholders who now require lots and lots of information on their ESG performance. And we're particularly passionate about helping our customers, I suppose, take a more data-driven approach to their ESG strategies, particularly around those big investment decisions to do with net zero as we start that transition. So a little bit more about us later, but I want to introduce you all to Suzanne Hill. Suzanne, delighted to have you joining us today. If you wouldn't mind just introducing yourself, your business, and the services that you guys offer over at AI for SMEs, that'll be great.
Okay, thanks, Liam, and thanks for asking me along today. So at AI for SMEs, we provide training and masterclasses in AI for business leaders from a non-technical background. So basically simplifying the entire process of AI implementation. And we very much approach things from a business perspective rather than a technical perspective. And we'll get into the discussion of that later on as well.
And Suzanne, just quickly, are you seeing like a bit of a peak in interest from businesses around AI and how they could potentially be using it? Not just really in relation to ESG, just the wider sort of business requirements.
Yeah, I think there's been really a marked uptick in interest in companies, and I think that people are starting to realize that this is really it's really important. It's not going away. That the technology is developing very rapidly, and everybody's basically in a race. So starting that race is very important. I think AI is it's unlike anything we've ever seen before in that, many companies in the past have seen things like even like ESG or sustainability back in the day, and it's taken them a while, maybe the journey and the evolution taking ESG. You know, it started out as waste management and moved on to sustainability and CSR and then ESG. And that whole thing took about 20 years to evolve. I think the big thing with AI is that if you think about that 20-year evolution crammed into about 2 years, and that's really what we're talking about. It's, you know, there's no time to sort of waste or sit and wait and see what happens, because the gap between people who have adopted AI and people who haven't is going to be so big that it would nearly be impossible to catch up. So it's actually getting to the stage where it's really urgent to actually take measures to start looking at AI and looking at how you can implement it across your company.
No, look, honestly, we're the same at SustainIQ, and I think I'm really looking forward to getting into this discussion today. I think, though, one of the things, and again, I know we spoke about this previous as well, there is a lot of confusion around it, a lot of concern. So I think it'll be good to get into it a little bit more and just get a wee bit more of an understanding around what it all actually looks like for business. But folks, very quickly, I just to set the scene a little bit, thought it would be useful to kind of recap a little bit on the ESG journey to date, where we're currently at. And then I think that just kind of allows us to sort of slide into the session around how AI is potentially going to impact it going forward. So look, ESG, sorry, got so many letters, isn't it? ESG has been around for decades now. But I think, look, for most of us in business, it really started to impact early 2000s, mid 2000s, with a probably a strong focus on environmental management, environmental sustainability. And I think certain sectors probably felt that more than others, certainly construction, those working in the public procurement space. And then I think around 2012, we started to see a bit of a shift towards social value, maybe more so around the people bit, apprenticeship placement opportunities, all of that. And then towards 2018, I think, again, we've seen another shift towards governance and responsible procurement, responsible supply chains, all of that. And businesses having to kind of start to report a little bit around that and demonstrating they've got kind of robust policy, robust procedures in place, certainly around things like modern slavery and so on. And then, you know, fast forward into the 2020s, and we're seeing it almost come full circle again with regards to the environmental side of things, with a big focus on carbon reduction and net zero. So I think when we look at ESG in 2025 in particular, and the journey that it's been on, it's no longer a one person or even a one department job. It has just evolved. There's so many stakeholders now that want access to this data. Before, it was heavily required for regulatory sort of compliance, I suppose. But then those commercial drivers, you know, even in the UK, if we look at the legislation, you know, we've now got things like Streamlined Energy Carbon Reporting, ESOS, Energy Saving Opportunities Scheme, and then a couple of weeks ago, we've the Procurement Act that's been published that's taking sustainability and social value within the UK public procurement space to a whole new level. And then within the EU, we've got things like CSRD and CBAM setting the scene. Now, there's been big announcements there from the EU over the last couple of weeks where they've kind of scaled back a little bit, but the legislation still exists and it's still impacting larger companies. And there's a lot more legislation coming, but those commercial drivers continue to rapidly evolve. You know, the clients want access to the data. Investors want access to the data as they complete due diligence to make sure they're not investing in a business that is damaging the environment or harming a local community somewhere. So more and more stakeholders want more access to the data, and you know, it's probably more important than ever to have access to accurate, reliable data that you can stand over, and that you are actually doing what you say that you're doing. So it has evolved. It's much bigger than one person now or even one department. Digital tools like SustainIQ are now needed by businesses to help them with the data capture and the data reporting piece. And I think, Suzanne, that's probably where the AI piece is starting to come in terms of, I suppose, increasing the speed at which we can get access to this information, and how we can start to make sense of it. But I suppose, like, my first question maybe to you today would be around, you know, those guys on the webinar today. that are maybe thinking about AI and how they they might be interested in looking at how they might start to integrate AI tools into their business. Like where would you even start? Like where would you even start on your AI journey, I suppose would be the first question just to throw out there.
I think that's probably the most common question I get asked is, where do we start? And the irony of the situation is that there's so much information out there about AI, but it's nearly, I think that we're at information overload point. And I think it's important to acknowledge that, I think that there's a fundamental disconnect between the information that's out there in the marketplace and the information that companies actually need, to be able to implement AI into their business. And there's a reason for that. There's a reason for the confusion. And I think it comes down to the fact that there are really three main sources of information about AI. The first one, and I'll say, none of the three of them are particularly helpful. So the first one is technical information. So, it's all tech speak. And really to the average business person, that doesn't mean a great deal. And you get people who are kind of, I suppose, nerding out on the terminology, the machine learning, the neural networks, the deep learning, all of that stuff. And if you're a business person and you're sitting in a company and you're responsible for strategy, all that stuff goes over your head. And, every week it seems that some of the AI companies are releasing new models and, LinkedIn and the internet goes into meltdown. And meanwhile, businesses are sitting looking at it thinking, what are they talking about? So the whole picture of technical information, I think, leaves people confused. And then another source of information is coming from the AI vendors. So there are actually, people are very familiar with things like ChatGPT, but there are actually over 14,000 AI tools on the market. So, everywhere you go online, you're being bombarded by ads from all these different vendors. And, it just leaves you completely overwhelmed. And you think, I don't know where to start with this. I don't know which AI tool is appropriate for my requirements. And, people can then start to make decisions that are more technology driven. Through the ads that they see, or they buy Microsoft Copilot licenses for everybody. Nobody's had any training. Nobody knows what to do with them. And it's costing the company a lot of money. And then so that sort of leaves people feeling very overwhelmed. And then the third source of information is hype. And there is so much hype around AI. It's unbelievable. So on the one hand, they would have you believing that, everybody's going to lose their job. All the companies are going to close, and then we're all going to be murdered by the office coffee machine. So it's just, so between these three sources of information, the entire picture for companies and for a non-technical person in a company is very confusing. So, but you have to remember that AI should always be strategy driven rather than technology driven. And I think that that's a kind of a core misconception that people have. So maybe if you want to reframe how you're thinking about AI, and look at it from a business perspective, there are three different types of AI. And the first one is automating processes, which is known as robotic process automation. So this is all about automating repetitive tasks that are, high volume, low value, and, all the admin drudgery that people really hate. So that's robotic process automation. That can be actually either hardware or software. So the hardware part of it is like your little robot hoovers and your Amazon delivery robots. It could be Internet of Things sensors. It could be drones as well. So that's kind of the hardware side of it. The software side is basically a program that automates a process within your company. And so the second type of AI then from a business perspective is gaining insights from your data. That's known as cognitive insights. So this is all things like, taking your data and using it for forecasting, predictive maintenance, customer insights, sentiment analysis, things like that. And then the third type of AI is all about improving engagement with your colleagues, customers, and community. And that's known as cognitive engagement. So I think from a business perspective, if you're from a non-technical background, framing the different types of AI in, through those three types, the robotic process automation, the cognitive insights, which is gaining insights from your data, and improving engagement, which is cognitive engagement. It's a much easier way to reframe what AI is and where it fits within your business and your business processes.
So that is actually really interesting. And you've raised a couple of really good points there. And one of them actually would be around the fact that most of us doing our job day to day, we aren't techies. I might be one of the co-founders of SustainIQ, but my background is sustainability, working in industry. And so the vast majority of us maybe sitting day to day, or we're wondering how this is going to impact us. So I suppose, like, when you look at non-technical roles, Suzanne, within a business, like ESG managers, HR managers, health and safety, commercial roles within a business, like how do you see this as companies start to integrate AI tools into their business? How do you see this start to impact those roles and actually the skill set within a business?
So this, in terms of AI implementation, this is huge and it's hardly ever talked about. The big focus is on the technology and the AI tools. And the way I try to explain that to people is, if you give 10 people a paintbrush and you ask them to paint a picture, you would get very different results from all of them. One could maybe paint a masterpiece, and there might be four who just, end up in disaster and complete mess. So the question then, if you equate the AI tool with a paintbrush, so the question is not, what type of paintbrush should I use? It's how do I learn to paint? Because it's the skill, AI magnifies what's already there. So if you have very skilled people who are really good at their roles, AI is going to be fantastic for those people because it will augment and enhance their skills. But if you are, for example, I think one of the biggest misconceptions around AI implementation is that, and we talk about digital transformation, and that puts the focus on the AI tools, but actually what you're talking about is organizational transformation.
Wow, yeah.
And, it's about behavioral change, cultural change, how people interact with each other, how they collaborate, because AI is essentially an entirely new operating system. So even how a company generates revenue and what its business model looks like will entirely change. And this is one of the things that, that say I focus on the courses that I do, is that it's not enough to just choose the AI tools. You could have an infinite budget for AI tools and have all the right stuff in place. But unless you have the support structures in your organization out around those, things like workforce planning and skills transition is massive. It's absolutely huge. And it's a really involved change management process. So say, for example, if you're an HR manager, one of the things that you should be currently looking at is, if you had to take any job role in the company and map what that person does or what their role involves, and say you number those tasks from 1 to 10. So maybe you implement robotic process automation, you end up automating part of that person's role. So you've got tasks 1 to 10, and maybe 1 to 4 you can automate. And people kind of think, oh, well, what's that person going to do with their time then? They're going to have all this time available. But that's not how it works, because you have to remember that you're implementing new ways of working, you're implementing new technologies. So essentially that person's skills have to move along with the technology. So they might not be doing skills 1 to 4 anymore, but their skill set that they currently have might move from 5 to 13. So, skills 11, 12, and 13 are all new to them. And this is where training comes in. So, and then, as you get further down the line, maybe 6 months or 12, maybe not even as long as 12 months, then you might be automating skills 5 and 6. And again, that person's skill set has to transition forward. So if you are an HR manager or HR director in a company, you maybe have 200 staff, and all of a sudden you think about, well, what portion of that person's role can be automated? What portion could be augmented, where they can, do more with the time that they have and the tools that they have? But also then this whole training program needs put in place to make sure that the entire workforce is transitioning from where they are now to where they need to be in 2 years. Because if you get 18 months down the line or 2 years down the line, and for example, your competitors have all implemented AI or are in the process of it, and they're transitioning their workforce skill set, and you haven't done that. So all of a sudden you might get to the 18-month point, and you might think, well, actually, in order to compete, these are all the things we need. But now we have a workforce that isn't fit for purpose. So it actually doesn't leave you with any wriggle room. So it's something that people, and by that stage, then the gap is too big to ever catch up. So it's going back to what I was explaining about ESG. You had the luxury of transitioning everybody's skills, over a 20-year period. You're literally here looking at probably 2 years. And you have to remember that the technology all the while is moving on. So it's kind of like, it's not a race that you finish, it's a race that you continue to run. So that whole process of implementing training and transitioning skills is something that people really need to start planning right now.
I mean, therein lies the risk and opportunities for businesses, because there's no doubt opportunities, but actually I never thought about those risks associated with doing nothing.
Yeah.
And 3, 4, 5 years from now, what that actually might look like to the business. And I suppose, Suzanne, listening to what you were saying there too, there is an onus on every single one of us to understand our own role within that business and how AI could potentially start to take certain tasks away, which would allow that role, that person, to then start to focus and develop additional skills. So there is a bit of ownership on each person, I think, as well, to understand the impact that this is going to have on them, and not maybe wait for the business at strategy level to sort of make those decisions for them type thing. So it's going to be an interesting couple of years, I think.
It will be. And I mean, that's the position I was in, kind of going back about 5 years ago. As you know, my background is in corporate strategy and sales and marketing, and, doing consultancy. I've been reading about AI for about the last 7 years, and kind of the more I read about it and the more the penny started to drop with me from a corporate strategy perspective, I came to the conclusion, if I sit here and do nothing, I'm not going to have a job in 5 years' time.
Right.
And that was kind of the impetus for me to go back to university and find out what it was all about, you know.
Yeah,
And
yeah, yeah,
so, so yes, there definitely is that, you know, personal ownership
yeah,
element of it. And I mean, in fact, one of the top, I would say, commentators or thought leaders on AI globally, she actually posted on Twitter and she said, you know, if you're an employee sitting in a company and your company has not provided AI training or, you know, hasn't started their AI journey, leave.
yeah,
And it was
yeah,
as stark as that, you know. But the reverse of that also is that I think that companies underestimate the leverage that AI and AI implementation can give them from an organizational perspective on attracting talent,
yeah,
you
yeah,
know, and building that into their brand. And I mean, there's all these kind of, you know, and I know certainly, say, take for example, in construction, the apprenticeship schemes that are being run, and in other industries, particularly things like though construction or engineering, which are seen as very traditional industries. You know, for companies like that to be able to say we're an AI enabled workplace, suddenly it takes on a whole other picture, and you know that has brand value.
Mhm.
And you know, you can leverage that then to attract people in, to retain staff as well. But it also has a knock-on effect then, you know, if you think about different industries like construction or engineering or whatever it might be, and you probably have partnerships set up with you know, the local colleges and further education colleges, universities and whatnot, even local schools. But say in the case of a construction company, it's going to be all apprenticeships and placements to do with construction. And they need to start thinking about, well, actually, we need to foster relationships with the IT departments. And they, you know, be looking at bringing in placement students or apprentices who are experts in data analytics or data
Yeah,
engineering or, you know, data science. So there's a lot of planning around the workforce and people part of it, which to me is a big chunk of it and much more important nearly than the technology end.
definitely a big challenge there as well. Um, See, Suzanne, like so looking at those roles, and you know, as I said earlier as well, ESG is now morphed, like it's evolved so much more than one person in the company or even one department. I suppose, like, are you able to set the scene a little bit in terms of what the future might look like with regards AI
Mm-hmm.
helping businesses report on
Mm-hmm.
their ESG performance? Can you sort of set that scene out a little bit in terms of what that might look like, A, from the data perspective, and also from the value that they then can start to get out of it, which I think in some cases today, the data it is being utilized, but maybe not to its full potential. And how AI, I think, has the potential to maybe open that all up.
It definitely does, you know. So take for example, you know, your customers that are using SustainIQ, you know, they're already well down the line here because data is crucial.
Mhm.
And it's quality of data as well as quantity of data. And the more data that you have, the more accurate your insights are going to be.
Brilliant.
So having that sort of repository of quality and quantity of information is a really, really good start. Um, so, um, so yeah, I mean, overlaying AI over the top of that, I suppose you're really looking at a shift from, you know, traditional ways we would have reported. It's always retrospective. You know that you have an ESG strategy, and you know you execute that strategy throughout the year, and at the end of the year, you know you report on your how you have performed. Well, what AI does is really shift the focus from being reactive to being proactive. It's providing information in real time, which allows you to adjust the path along the way. Maybe you're underperforming in a certain area, and it allows you to take then proactive measures to make sure that you're going to fulfill your KPIs by the end of the year. So in effect, AI is it's allowing much better insights, forecasting. It's allowing you to predict things in advance. If you take the example of, say, like a fashion retailer, they're really big into this and using it for ESG and to drive sales and to respond quickly to lots of different factors. So say like in the cognitive engagements and looking at your data, they'll be pulling data from lots of disparate sources like, supply chain, from climate, from, fashion trends. It could be something like, some influencer online is promoting a particular item and then the demand soars. Or it could be, that maybe some celebrity has been seen out wearing something. So that allows them to adjust their manufacturing, but they're also using that to mitigate against waste, so that they're not manufacturing stuff that nobody wants to buy. So it comes into the ESG picture through all those different elements, minimizing waste, getting better insights into customer behavior, responding quicker to customer behavior, looking at things like sentiment analysis and monitoring those in real time so that you can provide a more, I suppose, a hyper-personalized service to your customers.
Yeah. No, look, absolutely. I think, AI, machine learning, scenario modeling, all of that's a big part of SustainIQ, and certainly our roadmap going forward as well. It's going to very much play a big part in the platform. I think, Suzanne, I think as you've been talking there, we're hearing lots of opportunities. You're absolutely flagging some of the risks as well, but I think we are aware that it's not all perfect, that there are some potential cons with regards to AI, and I think it is important we sort of throw them out. Look, obviously, from an environmental perspective, there are huge implications. Potentially, this amount of data that's now going to be produced needs to live in a data center somewhere. They have to be powered, the energy requirements and the footprint associated with all of that. So there are huge concerns around the implications, environmental in particular, of AI. Could you maybe talk us through just some of the cons? And I appreciate they're not all environmental related, but I just think it's important that folks are aware of both pros but also the downsides of some of this as well.
Yeah, no, I mean, the environmental impact is definitely a huge part of it. There's no doubt about it. But I think you have to remember that, that's what it currently looks like. And this technology is developing so quickly. You saw the impact a few weeks back of DeepSeek on the market that's using only a fraction of the energy of, other models like ChatGPT. So I would expect, I would also expect that environmental aspect to evolve along with the technology. And, at the same time, AI is enabling us to come up with, more sustainable materials and, better R&D in terms of research into, more sustainable materials. So it's kind of, yes, there are, some of the other, I would say, cons of it as well are around ethics. One of the first things also that I think that a company needs to be aware of is getting an AI policy in place. You can have staff maybe uploading confidential information into things like ChatGPT, and then all of a sudden all that information is out in the ether. So that's a huge GDPR infringement, obviously. And of course, it's the company that's held liable, not the employee. So, training your employees, providing training and explaining to them, what's permitted, what isn't permitted, and actually understanding the rationale behind that is also very important. And then, of course, going back to, things like ethics, looking for bias in the data, is it very male focused? I use ChatGPT a lot, and I put in a prompt, with everything you know about me, can you generate an image of what my day-to-day looks like? And of course, it generated an image of a man, so it's just a small example, but, making sure that your data is of good quality, it's from lots of different sources, it's not skewed in one particular way. So those are all kind of, I suppose, things that you need to be thinking about when you're looking at AI implementation.
And in terms, I suppose, look, again, you spoke through many of the pros, but if you were to summarize, I think, look, there's one thing I heard you say on a webinar a few months back about AI, and I'll probably not get it exact here, but it was basically AI will allow SMEs to do more for less. And I just thought that kind of summed it up in a lot of ways. So, like, in terms of the key benefits, I suppose, of an SME adopting AI tools, what would you sort of highlight there as key examples?
Well, I think it's particularly topical at the minute, where because of the way the economy is, and I suppose some of the government policies as well, you've got the rise in national insurance contributions and all of that. So, and companies are reluctant to hire staff at the minute. So if you're able to, if you're sticking with the number of staff that you have and you're able to automate a part of their role and you're freeing up time to look at other things, you're maybe augmenting what they're able to do as well. It means that you're really maximizing that person's time and their outputs as well. So, I think that that's the big advantage of implementing AI, particularly at the minute when you really are looking at your resources and thinking, well, how can we grow as a company if we can't, hire more staff or, invest in whatever it might be, So,
I think that's a big benefit for SMEs, actually, to certainly, at least, if nothing else, start to explore that potential opportunity and find out a little bit more about how it might actually benefit them in their business. Guys, we're going to throw up, I think, just one last poll quickly. I'm just conscious of time, and just one more question to throw at Suzanne before we wrap. So just one last poll, just for those of you on the call today that have already started your AI journey, just to get an idea, what stage are you guys at? Maybe you haven't started, maybe you're just starting out, maybe there's some of you that have actually fully embedded this within their business strategy. So if you don't mind, just a couple of seconds there just to complete that poll, it would be really, really useful. Okay, Suzanne, so look, can you believe it? Like it's a big topic, a very big topic, and not an easy one to cover in 45 minutes. But it's really good to get that sort of overview, a bit of a taster in terms of what this all might look like in the months and years ahead. At our SustainIQ webinar, Suzanne, we always try to give people some practical steps, I suppose, that they can take back into their own businesses tomorrow, maybe when they get back into the office and log in. Like, is there any hints, any tips, any practical steps you could maybe share with us today that folks could take note of, that would allow them to start their AI journey within their own businesses?
Okay, so I would say the very first step would be to get an AI policy in place. This sets out then very clearly for employees what tools, AI tools, are permitted, which tools aren't permitted, what type of data can be used, making any data that's put into things like ChatGPT, making it completely anonymous. And I suppose just laying out some of the guidelines, to make sure that employees are aware of what they can and can't do, because that's very fuzzy. And if that's not clear, then they just use AI on their own devices. And you have no control then over what type of information is being put into those. So I would say get an AI policy in place. The second thing would be, look at your overall at your business, and carry out maybe an internal audit of processes. The whole purpose of implementing AI is either to help you achieve your business objectives or to help you overcome barriers that are standing in the way to achieving your objectives. So, carry out an audit of your processes. Look at where the bottlenecks are. What are the quick wins that you could have? And, then look at AI tools that could help you overcome those bottlenecks. So that would be the second thing. The third thing would be to check out training and providing training for your senior team, people who are involved proactively in setting the strategy is very important. And then also, training for your employees on AI literacy. So we have actually 2 accelerator courses that, and the next cohorts start on the 1st of April for the Business Accelerator and the 2nd of April for the Construction Accelerator. Now, these run over a period of 8 weeks for 1 morning a week. And they take companies through a roadmap of how to implement AI. And it's very much from this organizational perspective, putting in the structures to support AI implementation, looking at things like communication strategy, which underpins the entire process and is extremely important. Aligning your AI strategy with your overall business strategy, looking at the implications for leadership, putting together cross-functional teams, mapping how that's going to impact your workforce, looking at ethics and compliance, and then how you take that forward and mapping out a step-by-step process for your company. It takes you through a roadmap. It supplies you with checklists and templates. So it's really about simplifying the process of AI implementation. So those would be my 3 steps. The first one, AI policy. Second one, internal audit of processes, and then to undertake training. Sorry, I don't know. Have we lost people there?
I think Liam's maybe dropped off his connection.
Yeah. So no, that's what I thought. So maybe Rachel, if we wanted to take some questions, if anyone had any questions, or maybe go through the results of the polls.
Yeah, I have the poll results here. I can go through them. And if there's any more questions, if you just want to put them in the chat. But the first poll for how many businesses have already started to use AI tools, 59% said yes and 41% said no. Oh. And then for the second one of how many businesses have already started to use AI tools, just starting out was 56% and not started yet was 44%.
Yeah. I think that's a pretty typical picture from what I'm hearing as well. And, I think probably the most common one is ChatGPT. It's everywhere and people are using it kind of on a, maybe quite often, I would say, in quite a basic way. But there are also a lot of other AI tools out there that are job role specific. So, being aware of some of those rather than trying to make ChatGPT fit everything that you're doing, that can really speed you up as well. So, so just maybe some of the questions. Okay, so what are some of the courses or training you can recommend in starting AI in ESG? Well, again, I would signpost you there to check out my website, aiforsmes.com. The Business Accelerator course could help you to implement AI across ESG. If you're in the construction sector, then the Construction Accelerator course. But one thing I would say is that, you don't do one course with AI and then it gives you all your answers. I think even personally, I've done 10 different AI courses. I did my 2 university diplomas and then I went on and I did other courses. And even for me, I'm continually learning and doing other courses all the time. So I think that, as the technology evolves, this is going to be our lives now. It's going to be continuous training for the next, who knows, several years, just to keep up to date with how the technology is evolving. Let me see. How should companies approach workforce planning to ensure employees are reskilled and upskilled as AI transforms roles? And how can ESG principles guide this transition? So, yeah, I mean, in terms of kind of the first thing that companies need to do, it's that mapping process. It's the mapping, what skills does each job role have now? What portion of those roles can be automated, which tasks could be augmented by, using different AI tools, and then mapping, okay, so where do the skills need to move to? And I mean, that's part of what I cover in both my accelerator courses, is that process of mapping and getting, a training program put together. Then how can ESG principles guide this transition? Gosh, good question. That's one to think about. I think just in terms of, that whole mapping process is really core to it. Maybe if you want, maybe Matthew, if you want to clarify your question there, because I'm not maybe quite sure on exactly what you're asking there. Okay, could you suggest other AI tools other than ChatGPT for role-specific applications? Yeah, as I said at the very start, there are over 14,000 AI tools. So, it depends on the job role. And again, it's that information is, it's easy to come by. You literally just Google what AI tool can you use for X. But as I said at the start, it's less about the AI tool. Okay, yes, you need to find the tools that are appropriate, sign up for some of the trials, try them out. Not all of them are good. I am continually trying out different AI tools. Some of them are really good, some of them not so good. So and choosing the appropriate AI tool depends on what you already have. There are 3 different ways that you can implement AI in your company, and that is buy, bolt, or build. So you can buy off-the-shelf applications that you take a monthly subscription to, They're standalone applications, and that you don't really need to upset your entire IT system to be able to implement those. So those are very straightforward. The second way of implementing is bolt. So look for AI bolt-ons to software that you're already using, whether it's accounting software or, ESG tracking software, or any commonplace software that you're using. Those are two ways for SMEs to actually get involved in AI, to implement AI across different job roles and different functions without having to spend a whole stack of money. Now, and then the third option is build. So building your own AI for the vast majority of SMEs, that's a long-term strategy, because that's something that's going to require, significant investment. And then also the risk you run is that the technology is moving on. So to invest in something today that's going to cost you 200,000, is maybe not the best use of money. And one thing I would say is beware of taking advice from tech companies, because that is the route that they'll try to pull you down, because that is their core business. So looking for ways that you can buy in AI tools or bolt on AI functionality is a great way to get started, and that will get you well down the line of AI implementation. But make sure that you're looking at all the organizational stuff behind that to actually support what you're doing. So I hope that answers your question, Megan. Suppose I'm sharing things like fairness and inclusivity. Yes. So yes. So it depends on your hiring processes there. I think there's been a lot of bad press around recruitment and how skewed some of the recruitment models can be. There was a lot of coverage about that in the press. Of how, on the one hand, companies were using these AI tools to sift through CVs, for example, and because of bias in the data, it meant that a lot of really well-qualified people were being skipped over. So to kind of counteract that, then you got candidates who were using AI to write their CVs. And then the recruitment companies were complaining because the employees were using AI to write their CVs. So you had this kind of battle between the two, where they were both using AI, and the entire market just kind of has gone into farce. So yeah, I mean, you have to be very careful about things like that around recruitment and the whole HR piece. So Liam's back.
I'm back. I'm sorry about that, Suzanne. I lost my signal and my laptop went into meltdown. So thankfully you kept.
That's okay. It went very quiet for a while there. So.
Brilliant. And is there any more questions?
I think we've answered them.
That's good.
All
That's
there.
good. Okay. Well, look, folks, again, Suzanne, apologies about that. I think, look, just to wrap things up, Suzanne, could you direct people to maybe where they can get a little bit more information about yourself, the business? And I know you've got quite a few courses available. I know you've got a lot of events kind of coming up very soon as well. So
yeah, you've missed that bit. So yes. So signposting people towards the 2 accelerator courses on AIforsmes.com. And please feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. And if you have any more questions, do feel free to drop me a message. And, I'll be happy to answer any questions you might have.
No, that's brilliant. And folks, again, just to wrap us up as well, SustainIQ with an all-in-one ESG platform. We've got our 4-pillar methodology, over 250 data capture points, covering all aspects of ESG. So we've taken the pain out of what it is you need to record, and we've set that all out for you. Look, we're working with lots of companies right across the UK and Ireland and beyond, across quite a few sectors, including construction and manufacturing. So lots more on our website as well: resources, ebooks, customer testimonials, and so on as well. So I'd encourage you all just to go and have a look and have a read. And again, if you'd like any more information from us about SustainIQ, or you would like to request a demo, give us a shout. But Suzanne, I would just like to thank you again for coming on today and chatting through all of that with us. It's a fascinating topic. It's a hot topic, so it is so good to get a little bit more insight from yourself. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks for asking me along.
And thank you for running the show there for a while, whenever things went quiet. But folks, there's a few more questions in there. We'll get those answered tomorrow, and we'll send them out via email. Rachel and the team will send out an email to you all tomorrow, or maybe it'll be the start of the week, maybe Monday, with a recording of today's session and some more resources as well, with a little bit more information. So thank you all for attending. Really appreciate you taking the time to join us today. I look forward to seeing you all again at the next webinar. So until then, thank you so much. Take care. Cheers. Bye.
Thank you.